Boardwalk Bullet at Kemah Boardwalk is one of the most insane wooden roller coasters I have ever experienced. It's one that was always on my radar as coasters that I should eventually get around to. Everyone always talks about how many crossovers this thing has, 42 to be exact. And so I knew that the ride was probably really cool, but I recently had the opportunity to experience it, and it was way better than I ever could have imagined. Granted, I hadn't seen a point of view video in a long time, but even then, I don't think video quite did the ride justice for just how compact this thing is. The coaster takes up less than an acre of space. For a ride that's 96 feet tall and has over 3,000 feet of track, that is ridiculously impressive. They had so little room to fit this ride in that they had to shove the station, maintenance area, and exit platform for the ride inside the structure. So the coaster literally is wrapping around you. One of the first impressions that you'll get from it is when you're walking up the entrance ramp into the station, you'll see it goes directly next to the coaster track, and the whole thing shakes when the train flies by. The downside with this ride being so compact is that it was fairly hard to get footage of. That's why most of what you're seeing here is the point of view videos I shot, as opposed to off-ride footage. I just wasn't able to get too much, simply because of how dense the mess of track was. Now, before I get into the ride experience, just a couple fun stats that I don't have listed here in the top left-hand corner. According to Kemah Boardwalk, this coaster is 5 feet away from the water's edge. As you can tell, I rode this thing at night, so I could not tell at all. I didn't even realize the thing was next to the water. That's how little I was paying attention when I was actually on the ride. I mean, granted, the lift hill is facing away from the water, but still, I had really no idea just how close this ride was to Galveston Bay. So I imagine during the day, that'll add a whole different element to the ride. On the park's website, they list that you experience approximately 3.5 positive G's on this thing, which, I mean, hey, I believe. The bottom of the first drop before you go into the first turn is a fairly intense moment. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where you experience the most G-forces. The ride, as you can see here, is a gravity group coaster. It was designed by them, but actually physically constructed by Martin and Vlemex, and is currently running with PTC trains, which I thought was interesting. Most gravity groups, they run with their Timberliner trains, and I remember actually once at IAAPA, Mike Graham from the gravity group was quoted as saying if they could put Timberliners on any coaster, what would it be? Boardwalk Bullet. So it's kind of interesting to imagine how this ride experience would be different with the Timberliner train versus the classic PTC. Would it be better? Would it be worse? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I've never ridden a wooden coaster that at one point in time was running both different styles of train. Here's what I'll say though about the PTC trains. The advantage to them is that they're fairly small and tight, and so when you're on a ride like this that is really throwing you around, you are aggressively flying side to side through these lateral movements. Timberliner trains tend to be a bit more cushiony, they wrap around you a bit more, so just be a different style of sensation. I think it'd be interesting to see what would happen if they put the Timberliners on here, but as of how the ride was running when I was there, phenomenally. Boardwalk Bullet blew me away. Absolutely exceeded my expectations. I got 4 rides in on it, couple up front, couple on the back, and I could not believe how absolutely insane this ride is. Easily one of the greatest wooden roller coasters I've ever ridden. Is it in my top 25? Probably. It takes a certain type of ride to leave me shocked, simply because I've ridden so many different roller coasters that I've experienced it all. You know, what else could they do that could blow me away? Well, here's a particular moment that did just that. When you crest the lift, go into that turn into the drop, you're descending 92 feet at a 56-degree angle, feels steeper than that, but you're banking slightly to the left, and then at the bottom of the drop, you bank sharply to the right. So it starts off by flinging you one way, and then sharply yanking you to the right, and then the best moment of the ride is, in my opinion, these 2 little hops before you get to the far end of the coaster going into that overbank. When you are in the middle of that structure, there is a sharp bunny hop to the left and then immediately to the right, and that is what pulls you into that first turn. And I know I called that an overbank a second ago. Technically, it's not an overbank, but when you're flying at 51 miles per hour, it certainly feels faster than that. It felt like an overbank turn like you'd experience on like the Voyage. I encourage you to go and watch the front seat POV I posted of Boardwalk Bullet so you can hear the audio. You can hear how shocked I was during that moment. That POV was filmed my first ever ride on this thing, and normally I try and stay quiet for these videos. However, I was so blown away with that moment that I just had to biggest smile on my face. But the crazy thing is that the ride does not stop there, and the ride feels like it's never gonna stop. It absolutely hauls the mail through this layout. The only moment when it slightly slows down is this moment when it pops up to the second highest point, closer to that lift structure, before dropping back down. When this coaster was going through the testing phases, it actually valleyed because it didn't have enough speed to make it through that turn. Well, clearly they fixed that because the pacing on this ride was so unbelievable. I can't even imagine riding this thing if it were crawling through the layout. It just wouldn't be the same. I rode Boardwalk Bullet after I had just recently gone through a $1 million refurbishment, and the ride was running like a dream. It was very smooth, which I know that's sometimes a complaint with a ride like this. Like, okay, how rough is it going to be? No. When I rode it, ridiculously smooth. And I think the biggest takeaways for me with this ride, I mean, everyone talks about the crossovers, but I just love the feeling of flying within the structure. I mean, a lot of people talk about Steel Vengeance's second half, when you're flying low to the ground through the structure. That's literally all Boardwalk Bullet does. In my opinion, this whole ride is better than the second half of Steel Vengeance. I'm sorry, I know some people are gonna give me flack for that, but I think Boardwalk Bullet does it better, and it doesn't get talked about enough. That doesn't mean I like this coaster more than Steel Vengeance, but when we're talking about coasters that are weaving past dense sections of wood at incredible speeds, I think Boardwalk Bullet does it better than any other ride I've seen. It's doing it the entire structure. At one point we were walking around Boardwalk Bullet and I'd see a section of track, and I could not tell you at what point during the ride the train passes along that section. I had no idea. You can't track this ride. You don't know where it's going next. And that's what's so great about it. This ride is the definition of out of control. Ready for this? I think you could make the argument that this is the best roller coaster in Texas. More so than Iron Rattler, more so than New Texas Giant or Wonder Woman. I don't know if it's my personal favorite coaster in Texas. However, I know people where it is for them. So if that doesn't have this ride on your radar, it definitely should be now. I know it's kind of out of the way to go for roller coasters. I mean, most people when they're in Texas, they say, okay, we'll go Six Flags Over Texas and Fiesta Texas and SeaWorld San Antonio because they're in easy to access locations. Then you just have Boardwalk Bullet and Iron Shark like way off to the side in the Houston area. But trust me, if you decide to go out to this section of Texas to go ride this thing, you will not be disappointed. Get a wristband or something that allows you to ride this more than once. Try it out in the front and the back, and if you can, ride it at night. Obviously, I have not experienced it during the day, so I couldn't tell you if it's as good, but at night, it was running really fast, and I think the fact that you could barely see where you were going only added to the experience. So for Boardwalk Bullet's final score, I think I'd be crazy not to give it a 10 out of 10. Absolutely incredible ride. But that's going to do it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments below if you've experienced Boardwalk Bullet, what you think of it, if you agree with my thoughts, if you disagree. Post all that down below, and of course, stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.